Welcome back. You gotta scream, nigga.
Oh, welcome back. Yeah.
Yeah. Profound Podcast, Season 3, Episode 2. We got dear friend of mine, Mr. Washington.
Hello, my name is Caleb. Nice to meet you guys.
And today we're talking about identity, character.
You had to think about that one, didn't you?
Take some time. I had to ponder that one. And past experience. So the first question that I have for you, sir, is how much do you think the past impacts the present moment? In terms of what you do, how you feel, how you act.
Okay. So there's multiple answers that I can give to this question.
Okay.
So if you don't know, I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. Currently studying right now, but I'm taking a class on AI. And AI is important for this topic because you can actually look at AI as...
No, you good. Keep going.
All right, but yeah, you can actually look at AI as... AI was designed to model the human brain, right? And so within AI, there's this thing called reinforcement learning. And reinforcement learning basically rewards the AI agent with either a positive reward or a negative reward based off of specific experiences. And now, what's it called? The agent can choose to do two things. It can choose to explore or it can choose to exploit. So exploiting is basically using its past knowledge in order to come up with a solution to different things. And exploring is basically not using any past knowledge, but just trying things and seeing what happens, right? So we're kind of talking about how much of our identity is made up by our past.
Sure.
So if you take, I think that your identity is wholly made up of your past, but it doesn't really affect your actions. It doesn't necessarily affect your actions. It affects them more as you grow older, is what I would say. When you're a kid, you're still exploring. You haven't made enough actions to have an identity. So while your identity is kind of still in limbo, your actions and the consequences of those actions will inform the identity that you have.
What age do you think that stops, or you don't think it's like a case-by-case type of...
I think it's a case-by-case for sure. I think that some people are still exploring to this day that are some people explore their whole lives. People...
So you think that, does that point just happen once you gain enough self-awareness to reflect upon your past?
I think that self-awareness, reflection on your past can tell you that something is negative, but you can still do it anyways. Because some people are just hard-headed. Some people, it takes them longer to learn. But I think for most people, you tend to explore less when you get older. I'd say the age in which, well, obviously, you could think about it scientifically in terms of when your prefrontal cortex develops. But I would like to say that you also have things like midlife crisis and stuff like that, where people go and they explore and they do different things, go buy a Ferrari with no credit. You know what I mean? Got a 470 credit score, buying a Ferrari at the age of 50. You're just doing that because you're bored. It happens. But I don't know. I think your actions are, I guess, informed by your past, but not always. I think that they're more informed by your past the older that you get.
I feel that. I feel like it depends on the person a lot for how much the past is going to impact the future. Because I feel like a lot of people come from uncertain past in terms of overcoming their own traumas, overcoming their own hardships, and then they sort of blossom into a new sort of identity that doesn't necessarily conform to that. It may still be a part of their past, but I think the impact of the past I think is most prominent is really the stuff from when you were younger. Mm-hmm. Not so much stuff when you're older, but then again, I'm a very young person. But I think certain things that alter the way you think about yourself change how you allow yourself to be expressed, and whether or not that past reflection can actually impact your actions in the current day. Like you said, some people are still hard-headed, and I think that's because they're not recognizing their own choice sometimes, and more so identifying themselves with the way they have been, and they don't really know how to get the ball rolling on their own change.
Well, I feel like it could be that, but I also feel at the same time, people who are hard-headed could just think to trust themselves over trusting anybody else, right? They could have experiences in their past that informs them that yeah, okay, cool. These people might be telling you to do something, but you've had experiences that, okay, I have to go my own way. A lot of people, particularly in, I found in lower income communities, A lot of people be like, oh, it's just me. It's just me. This is what I do because it's just me. And typically, the way in which, if you're in survival mode and that's all you do is all you know is to look out for yourself, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, it's just me. This is just what I do. So I'm going to keep doing what I do because at the end of the day, I know that I'm the person that has to look out for myself if anything goes wrong. Right? And so if you're that person, then you're not going to, some of your experiences are going to inform the way you think. But sometimes you're going to just do what you know to do. You know what I'm saying? What you've done in the past because it's gotten to you to a point where you are. And you're not going to let necessarily, you may let some experiences shape you, but you won't let other people's experiences shape you. Like, I mean, like, it's harder for them to have, like, mentors and stuff like that because
they can't let them go down.
You haven't had a mentor, you know what I'm saying, for a long time. And, you know, it's just kind of like, if you haven't had a mentor and you've been living life on your own through just learning and doing what you do, then you're going to stick to your own ways, you know. Whether you learn from your own ways or not, it's cool, but, like, you're going to stick to your own ways because at the end of the day, that person is what helped you survive.
No, I feel that for sure. I think there's definitely, like, I don't know. There's definitely just two sides to that sort of development as people overall. Like, I see it as, like, you're either too concerned with your own, like, thoughts about the past and too reflective, too, I guess, self-aware. I think there's a limit to how aware of yourself and how much you should think about that stuff, I think. And then they learn not to trust themselves and their own decisions and their own this is that and other, and they rely on the world to sort of teach them what to do. Or they go the route you're sort of talking about, and like you only listen to yourself and you don't really consider other people's thoughts. And I think, like, I don't really know what the definite in between is, but I think like there's a certain level of honesty you have to learn to have with yourself, and it's kind of hard to grasp at because like you don't know what your truth is relative to like someone else's, and they differ in like subtle ways that may change like how you're perceived and how you perceive a certain situation. So, I don't know. I feel like it's all really just a balancing act because I feel like certain people, you know, trust themselves to a certain extent. Some people are reflective enough to actually like compound upon the work that they were doing. Like I was very introspective as a kid. Like I used to overthink too much, and that's like why I got a good repertoire, I feel like. But it wasn't until I started like trusting myself a little bit more in terms of my expression, pretty much anything I was doing, that I actually was like able to be comfortable and not overly thinking about stuff, and actually I can see the things that I wanted to change about myself and my surroundings. But I feel like on both sides of the coin, if you overthink, you still probably won't change, and if you underthink,
then
you're really not changing.
Yeah, well, the thing about and that's like, I guess like the dilemma of like overthinking is like the reason why you can't come up with a decision if you're too busy in being in the thought space, right? So like I think that's something to point out. But I do think that like one thing that's important is like the thing, like environment changes are what disadvantages the people who trust themselves over their experiences. So like for example, I went to China in the 4th grade for I think it was the summer going into 5th grade. Yeah, I went to China and I stayed there for a month. And obviously, like in a different country, there are different cultures, there are different expectations of people. Like people behave differently, right? I feel like in order to maximize my own experience, I had to kind of just like, and I think that this is like something that like is something that well-traveled people benefit off of. So like, this is going to be a tangent, but I genuinely do think that the purpose of travel will help like majority of people because you get to see things from a different worldview, which means you're less likely to be stuck in your own ways. If you're growing up in a specific place and you've seen the way a specific place raises you to be a certain person, if you grow up in that place that your whole life, you're not gonna know, okay, I could actually act this way in this type of environment, or there's actually other environments that I don't have to act this way in. You know, so I feel like that's the gift of travel. But when I was in the 4th grade, when I went to China, I feel like that experience opened my worldview because it allowed me to see that there were different types of people that didn't necessarily like think the same way that I did. You know what I mean? And so like that's an example of how like an experience can help, or a change in environment can help you kind of change your mindset in terms of trusting your own pathway versus letting your experiences inform you. And like I moved around a lot like my whole entire life. So every single point in time, I've literally been like I've moved somewhere every 4 or 5 years. Somewhere every 4 or 5 years.
Telling me about that,
Yeah. So like when you do something like that and your environment is always changing, then you can't necessarily always trust your own instincts. There's a certain part of yourself that you have to be true to, and I feel like that's the identity portion. But there's always something that has to change, like in terms of like how you interact with people, like kind of like your presented identity versus like your shadow
your
self.
expression versus like what you embody. Yeah, for sure. I don't know, like stuff like that is definitely something I think about in regards to my own life, because like I didn't really move around too much. You know, my parents were separated, so I would like go back and forth. But I don't necessarily like think about how much that impacted me as a person, like growing up, like seeing that change in perspective, because they were definitely different environments. They definitely were. And I don't know. That's just not something I've really given too much thought about in regards to like how much like those type of subtle changes can actually impact it. But I'll say like what's making my college experience so much better is like trying to teach myself to be more human in regards to like allowing other perspectives, because I feel like we all come into it with a little bit of too much ego in regards to definitely. Not like you can be open to a perspective without letting it change your own, and I think that's an important quality to have, because then it allows you to actually listen to people, I think, and then actually like establish those connections and actually like see other perspectives and decide whether or not you want to like apply that to your own. Like there's plenty of stuff my parents say, my pops used to say, he used to yell at me and be like, you don't have to internalize it, but you gotta listen. And that's just something I had to accept. Like you gotta listen. You gotta listen sometimes and decide whether or not it's for you. Yeah. But
no, I mean that's definitely real. I feel like well, you know, like for me, like I feel like it was kind of like put in my face to like always understand how your environment affects you, because I had no choice. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's
what you were aware of. Like,
it was just something that was just right in front of my face, you know. And I went to boarding school in the 9th grade. So like I started when I was 14. I was living away from my parents. I was living away from everything. So I kind of like developed like kind of like my worldview like at that period in time, you know what I mean? Like, obviously, like other than growing up as a kid, but like I kind of like became like more like a lot more introspective, like because they had us do like a lot of assignments that were like writing papers and different things. It was in the middle of New Hampshire, so like you're not like it was literally in the middle of New Hampshire. So the boarding school was not. You're literally if you're in New Hampshire, you're just cultivating your own mind. Like you're not doing anything else. You're just thinking like. That's it. Like, like I'm telling you, there was we didn't have a Chipotle. The only chain restaurant we had was a McDonald's.
No K's.
And no K's. Only like no franchise stores. Dang. We had the closest thing we had like a Hannaford's, which is like I think an Albertsons or maybe a Kroger. But that was the only thing, and that was outside of the radius that we could travel to technically. Without getting an out of town slip. But anyways,
out of town slip.
Yeah, we had to have an out of town slip. But anyways, like I feel like going there, my experiences. I had to listen to so many different people from different walks of life because there were like I think 20% international students. So like 20% of the people that went there were literally from other countries, and like the way in which they experienced life and they went through life here was just completely different. And like. It even gets down to like things like social nuances and stuff like that, because a lot of Asian cultures there's a thing called like saving face, and like we don't really necessarily do that in America. You know what I mean? Where like they'll be like they'll tell you something that you like want to hear over what they're actually feeling. You know what I mean? So for example, like someone will go up to me and be like, I'll ask like, okay, do you like my shirt? And you'll be like, oh yeah, or they'll be like, oh yeah, like it's cool, you know what I'm saying, but not actually mean it. Or you'll be like, you know, because I mean it's just saving face. Like it's like, well yeah, sure, like it's cool, you know. Or like what's another example? Like you'll ask them, you may ask like a political question, you know what I mean, which is informed obviously by like different things like your government and stuff like that. But like I could ask you like, what do you think about the Black Lives Matter movement? You could be like, oh yeah, I don't know, you know, like yeah. And then that's how you answer the question. You know what I mean? Like so like I don't know. I feel like just being exposed to those different types of people like shows you that you don't have to live your life a certain way. And I think that's like a very important thing. Like if you feel like you're stuck in a box and you feel like your mindset's not changing, one thing that I would say is like try to talk to as many different people as you can, because that'll inform you how to make a different decision based off of like what you already know. So you can keep the tangible parts of yourself, like to keep the parts of yourself that you know to be true, but you can also be able to like kind of pivot in a way and think about life differently. Even if you don't change your own actions and change how you like what you do, you may be thinking about life differently. you know, and I feel like that helps everybody, in my opinion.
Yeah, like accepting that you could be wrong about certain stuff, or accepting that you're not always right. That was like a big thing for me. I'm not gonna lie. Like I had to, I don't know. I feel like you can't learn anything if you always think that you're right or always think you have an answer. And I think part of me just wanted to like learn more. So I started just like, I don't know, just opening myself up a lot more to other perspectives. And I think that's what sort of branched me out into school. Like, I feel like I was very introverted like my freshman year. And I feel like as it's progressed, I just learned to appreciate like that growth aspect of seeing other perspectives. Like even if it doesn't help, I don't know. It's just always something that's sort of been like a good thing for me. And I think it leads to like a sort of authenticity with yourself because you get to like discern what you actually believe from like a bunch of various options, and it like really gets to you. So like my next question is like, what do you think authenticity is?
Authenticity. That's interesting. Basically, like, in order to be authentic, like, I feel like authenticity. It's easy to see authenticity like in like a monolith. Like, I could be like, oh, okay, like this person's acting this way, so this must be their authentic self. And then when they switch up and act differently, it's like, okay, you're not authentic anymore because who you were just acting like yesterday is not how you're acting like today. But I feel like true authenticity should be like within the eye of the beholder. So, for example, for me, like, for me being authentic, I would just have to be authentic to myself at whatever point in time that I'm in.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So, like, obviously people change, you know, is basically what I'm trying to say. And like, as long as you're authentic to yourself, as long as you're being true to yourself, then you're your authentic self regardless, because that can change, you know, and that's okay. And I think that, as a matter of fact, your authentic self should change. Yeah, I think that authenticity is a little bit more fluid than we kind of give it. Than we kind of give it credit for. As long as you're looking at it from a kind of like an introspective view, I feel like authenticity is more so like how we view ourselves versus like how other people view us, because everybody can view you in a skewed light or in a light that's not actually true necessarily.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it is an individual standpoint and thing. Like I think you can see authenticity in other people, but I don't know. I think we just associate that with like a good relationship to people and being like open and genuine. And I think there's always a level of like, okay, they could be lying to anything someone says, but I think, I don't know, it's just like a certain trust that you have, even if it's blah, blah, blah. But I do think it's listening to yourself overall, just learning to be authentic to your own feelings and thoughts, and I guess validate them, at least in the mental sense. Like, it doesn't always have to be expressed. Like, I wouldn't be this authentic to myself if someone like said something I didn't necessarily like and I like crashed out. Like, that's just because I felt anger. That's not necessarily like, I feel like, a good expression of authenticity. I feel like I still was being authentic to myself and just feeling it, not necessarily always having to express it.
So what would you feel like is the difference between being authentic and being genuine?
See,
is that expression?
They're sort of the same sort of thing. I think you can be genuine to others and genuine to yourself, but I think genuineness to the self is authenticity. But I think you can be like genuine with other people and still be inauthentic to yourself, because I feel like the way we prescribe someone being genuine is more so a tell of their actions. Like someone could be being genuine to who they are and express themselves in a negative way, and you wouldn't call them genuine. Like, I think we sort of skew ourselves from the actual definition of the word when we talk about someone's genuine actions.
Because it's mostly social.
Yeah, it's like an adjective we add on,
and it's perceived. Like, okay, yeah, that reads. No, I mean, one point that I did want to talk about though was like just the idea of change, like within identity too. Like, I think that people kind of get like, well, actually, there's a lot of things I want to talk about in terms of identity.
That's a very huge question.
Yeah, but the idea of change, like, I feel like my biggest like issue with identity, and I feel like this is like the same for like a lot of like black men in general, is like kind of like getting a grasp on what it means to be a black man, you know? Because like for me, like or what it means to be a black man, what it means to be black, what it means to be a man. Like there are so many things within your like
the intersectionality,
that just make it like make the whole concept of identity super interesting, right? Because like there's a lot of people who I think that actually everybody is kind of a victim of this. Like everybody is a victim of society playing a role into what your identity is, right? So whether you conform to like a specific identity, like on a racial spectrum or on like a gender spectrum, I feel like there's some sort of societal influence on that, regardless of what that is. And I think that it's interesting to like think about that with regards to authenticity, right? Because if there's a societal influence on you, are you still being authentic?
Yeah. I don't know. That's a very tough question. I would like to say that there's an answer that is yes. But society impacts us in ways that we probably aren't even aware of. And I recognize that constantly, but it's not something I try to occupy myself too much with, because it's like, you know, there's so much out here that's just a concept that somebody put out there. And we have to sort of work with these concepts in our own way. And I don't know.
But do you?
Do I? I try to, like, genuinely.
And the reason why I say this is because, like, that's what, and I feel like that's what traveling opened me up towards. Like, the idea of, like, you don't necessarily have to conform to this method of identity because it's different in other places. Yeah. Like, for example, like, if you go to Africa, like, you know, it's acceptable for a woman to be topless. Acceptable. Or if you go to beaches in France, it's acceptable for women to be topless. When you're in America, woman, you can't be topless. Like,
that's true.
Go get a fine. Like, police, like, you know what I'm saying? Something. Or like in another sense, like, being topless is like inherently sexual. You know what I mean? And so it's like you do have to conform to certain things that society puts on you, but like there could possibly be a society in which you wouldn't necessarily have to do that. If that makes sense. Because or at least it could be different than what you're experiencing in your common life. I mean, it could actually aid people more to be a part of another society that doesn't necessarily go against their values, you know, or go against who they are, their identity. Yeah. Some societies are catered better towards others.
I think society just teaches you like a blueprint of how you ought to think, and like definitely traveling abroad definitely helps us. So I'm excited because I'm traveling abroad in like 2 weeks.
Where you better go?
France and Morocco.
Oh, you doing that trip?
Yeah. So I'm excited for that for sure. I don't know. I used to talk about the societal impacts of stuff all the time, but like as I've grown up, it's just gotten more and more like skewed as to like, I guess the intersectionality part of it for real. Because like as a man, like there's certain qualities that I want to uphold, and adding like the label of black man onto that just adds like this feeling that there needs to be more to your identity than currently is. So I think it's sort of like a battle with yourself trying to put labels on you sometimes. Not necessarily saying that those labels aren't prominent in society and they don't have an actual like impact on what you're doing and how you express and how you're perceived most of all, but more so like how you feel about yourself. And I think that's sort of what my focus tends to be on, rather than like how this label is perceived, more so like what I want for myself and what do I think is best in terms of me overall, in terms of both my experience and how sometimes how others experience me. Like I don't feel like I interact with in a negative way to most people, and I don't interact with negative people most of the time. So I don't necessarily think I have to like present myself to negative situations like that where I guess my identity would feel in question.
I think that I don't know, like it's interesting that you talk about like being a black man and kind of how like that like will form identity, because like for me, I've kind of just like thought about it in terms of like impact, right? Like because like and like impact, but also kind of just like duty and also purpose. Like my purpose for like I felt like a lot of who I want to be is informed by my identity, because I feel like as a black man, I grew up with more privilege than the average black man does. You know what I'm saying? Or the average black person does. And so for me, I felt like there's an inherent privilege in that. And being a Christian, there's an inherent privilege in that requires you to go and serve your community. You know what I mean? And so for me, that's kind of just something that informed my purpose, right? And so like, other than that, think about my identity all too often. You know what I mean?
Like, it's a limiting thought to have. Really.
Yeah, it is a limit. I think it is a limiting thought because you can't be putting yourself in a box. Like I think that like boxes, obviously. Okay, so think about it like this way, right? Like, say you're in a homogenous country, like a race homogenous country. You're not viewing yourself as like
this
black.
Race. Yeah, you're just a person.
Yeah. But also, I mean, even in that case, like there is tribalism. So there's always some sort of like division, and that's something that's like super interesting. There's always some sort of division. Like even if you go to India, like they have caste systems, right? Like if like even in a homogenous country, they'll have caste systems where they like literally rank different people, not based off race, but based off of certain things. And like tribes used to go to war in literally every single country. Like if you go to even like, I don't know, Europe, like you had wars over different countries over there, you know, and in America, they would all be considered the same race, even though they're different nationality, right? So it's like, I think that like perceived identity has always been used kind of as like a tool for division, in my opinion. Like,
because what, it forces people to want to be a certain way?
No, but if you label somebody as something, you can decide whether they're better or worse than you.
Explain that further. So,
for example, like, if somebody is different, I feel like, at least in America, or actually, I think that this might be an American worldview, but like, difference is taught, difference is kind of taught to be something that's negative in every regard. So, like, for example, if you think about any bully in any high school drama or any Disney Channel movie ever, the person who's bullied is always bullied because they're different. In some way, shape, or form. It doesn't matter if they're the same race. They can be the same race, but the kid getting bullied is a nerd, or the kid being bullied that thinks differently. You know what I'm saying? Some sort of difference, some sort of abnormality from the status quo makes somebody a target. Mm-hmm. And I don't know whether that's like an American way of thought or not, but it kind of encourages, what's it called? I think it encourages assimilation, and assimilation for the purpose of identity of the people who want you to be assimilated to. So, for example, like for example, like if you're a dominant culture, right? The reason why I want you to assimilate to me is that way I understand who I am more, in a way, right? So, for example, bully bullies the kid, right? Bullies a kid who's like, I don't know, a nerd, right? I bully you because you're a nerd. So that makes me feel more secure in my identity, in a way.
So we're all just grasping at straws, trying to strengthen our own identity. So is that where you think the onslaught of ego is from? Like the negative part of what you would call an ego or identity?
Is from like comparison or like...
Well, yeah, that and like this idea that your identity is quote unquote the best, or the qualities that you have or what you assign to yourself is
it is a negative
quote unquote good.
Because if you have to think about because like I feel like, well, I mean, this is not true, but like I feel like some people are taught that like if you think about yourself as good, then somebody with different qualities, if they're opposite of you, is bad, right? And so like inherently within your ego, like in order to maintain your ego, somebody else has to be pushed out because they're opposite from certain parts of your ego. And I feel like that's why bullying happens, because people want to maintain their ego in a certain regard, and somebody else is trying to succeed while maintaining their ego, but somebody has an upper hand in some way, and they use that to maintain their ego. You know what I mean? So I think that like that's part of it. That's got to be part of it.
Yeah, I definitely think ego is I see it so often. I see it within myself too. It's like, in my head, it's just the way that your past thoughts about yourself, or the way who you think you are, is expressed through your actions sometimes, or through your thoughts. Like, I think ego will stop you from enjoying a lot of the parts in life. Like sometimes I think we're offended by qualities of other people that we don't have. Like, and when I say offense, it's not necessarily like, it's not like a conscious anger. At least I don't think so in most people. It's more like you dislike the whole person for it.
Envy?
Yeah, it's like a projection of your own insecurity. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are unaware of that, and we tend to dislike a lot of people for the qualities that they have that differ from ours, partially because we want them ourselves. But I think it's important to appreciate the difference, and I think that appreciation of like difference in other people allows you to appreciate your own individuality so much more, because it's like it's not about like your comparison, your contrast with people, but like allowing everything to sort of be as it is, so the whole picture can sort of exist.
Yeah, I feel like you kind of have to believe in collectivism.
Yeah,
and I think, and that's why I think that it's an American thought, because like America does not teach collectivism. It teaches individuality. It teaches pull yourself up by your bootstraps and go get your money. Go get what you you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Go make a life for yourself.
Now let's make a life for us.
Yeah. But like in other cultures, like right, like it takes a village to raise people, right? It takes a village to raise a child, right? So like if you think about that, that's an African proverb, right? So it's like when you look at these two different things, I don't know. It kind of leads to why like some people will be even subjugated by other people, because like say you're like an imperialist, right? Like say you're like Christopher Columbus and you're coming to like where he went to America, right? Mm-hmm. Well, say you're okay. So say you're some random like person anywhere, like a random imperialist, right, from some European country. You go down to Africa and you're like, oh, these guys working together. But I'm by myself, like I'm trying to get by. So that inherent selfish mindset may actually, or that inherent mindset, I don't even know if it's necessarily selfish, but the mindset of like individuality, I think leads to subjugation, right?
I think, yeah, it's definitely a selfish thing. I think it's just a preoccupation with yourself. Like, I don't know. I think you can't really connect with somebody unless you actually believe that you're connecting with somebody. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people live life from such an individual standpoint. They don't acknowledge that other people have like their entire life behind them. Like they have their own stuff that they've gone through that's informed them to think this way, that way. And I don't know. Like we're not gentle enough with each other to actually do anything in America, or at least that's what I think.
Yeah, I don't think that where American culture is built off like the understanding of somebody else. And also I don't even necessarily know if American culture is built off of like true friendship.
Well, like people actually being happy about anything for real.
Yeah, because like if you really took the time to understand a person, and really develop like intimate bonds with another person, or like even like if you really loved another person, then, or at least in Christianity, if you loved everybody as yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Then there could be no way that you could have more than somebody unless you needed it.
Yeah, because you would look out.
Yeah. Right, you wouldn't want more than you would want everybody to be able to have what they need.
Yeah,
right?
I think.
I don't know. I mean,
I completely agree, and I'm trying to think of like why that may be. I don't know. I think it's the whole like, I don't know if ego is like a taught thing or inherent thing. That's just something I don't really know. There's like people. You think so? I think there are people who. Well, hold on. Let me say this. I think the way that like we're thinking about ego, or you might be thinking about ego in this case, is like just a negative aspect. I think ego, you need to have an identity. You need to have something to express yourself as. Mm-hmm. I do think you need an ego, but I think the negative parts, like the selfishness, the just I guess more so the selfishness, the preoccupation, is something that can be sort of let go to an extent. Like I think there are people who truly embody what it means to be like a selfless person. But I don't know what's going on inside their head at the same time. So I don't know. It could be an acting game, but I would hope that there is like a light at the end of that tunnel for real.
Well, I think it's desire.
What? Us wanting stuff?
Mm-hmm. The desire. I feel like desire is what keeps you from being selfless. Because if you did not desire anything, and you prioritized human connection, then there would be nothing that you wouldn't do for somebody else, right? It depends on what your priorities are. Like, because the only reason why being selfish exists in this materialistic world is because I value something that I have or something that I want to get more than you. So, for example, like, if I was just like, say like somebody's shooting you, and like the bullet's in slow motion, right? And I have the entirety of the amount of time to think if I should jump in front of this bullet or not, right?
Of course, you do it.
But I would die if I jumped in front of the bullet, right?
Maybe.
No, I would definitely. I would say, like, hypothetically, I would definitely die if I jumped in front of the bullet. Right? Okay. The things that are going through your head is, oh, well, why should I jump in front of this bullet? Is my life better than is the potential for my life greater than the potential for their life? Is the impact of my life greater than the impact for their life? Do I want to live more than they want to live?
People actually like
I think that
there's situations like this that happen in people's real life.
I think that if you had an infinite amount of time, these are the things that would be going through your life. These are the things. If you were actually even contemplating being selfless.
But like people who are selfless in that situation, do you think they're just their first thought is their life is more valuable than mine? Let me die.
No.
Like, what do you think they're? I don't think it's a thought. I think actually, that's more so guided by feeling. I think. Well, I'm thinking of like someone protecting their kid or something like that. Like that stuff is. I feel like there's certain inherent nature to like a real connection that we establish in our head, and I think if we learn to actually value our connection, because I think any like loving father is going to, I don't know, love their kid more than like any possession they have. I would like to think, I would like to hope. So I think that it definitely is just like a value game that we put on pretty much everything. And we are in a capitalistic society. So we a lot of times value material over ourselves, over our time, over any type of, I guess, appreciation we can give to ourselves. We just spread it to our possessions and what we have.
And I think that's inherently dangerous, but I think that's one of the more obvious like examples of like how capitalism will affect you. Like some people will think about like the way that they think as like more valuable than the way somebody else thinks. And I think that's where like certain like smart people may not sacrifice. Because like if you saw somebody as like dumber than you, right? And a bullet was shot, and you saw like okay, or there was some situation which you had the choice to sacrifice yourself for somebody who was dumber than you. Then would you look at it as like, oh yeah, like my impact in life may be greater than this person. I have a greater potential for impact because this person is dumber than me. So I'm not going to save them. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
But that's interesting, right? Because like you like, yes, it's value, it's materialistic things, but it could also be like intellectual value. Like a reason
whatever
why
we do, but yeah, whatever you value.
Like it is whatever you value. So I think that we kind of have to like think about like, I guess like value and identity as well, right?
Somewhat identity is based off the values you have for yourself. Like if you really value patience, that's something I think you'll practice. That's something you'll actually try to achieve. So maybe it's like learning the right things to value that actually like makes a society or a group of people like actually positive, I would say. Like even when you say like living by certain proverbs, like it takes a village, just living by that, having that in your head, I think affects your subconscious enough to have people like actually think for other people, or just like having little stuff like that. Like there's no sayings or parts of American society I think that are like were founded in American society that I think are just overtly beneficial to the idea of connection.
You said there's nothing in America that's overtly ideal to the beneficial.
Well, I haven't necessarily heard anything that's like.
I think it is for subjugated people.
Like what? Subjugated in regards to like having like a minority?
Like if you, I don't know. I mean, I think there are elements of it in subjugated communities, right?
Like what do you mean by subjugated community?
Like any low income community, any community that's like minority community. I think that there are elements of like
hope
pushing together so that way you can collectively rise up.
Okay.
So like that's why DEI exists.
Right.
Right.
Hopefully.
Well, not anymore.
Existed.
Yeah. But I think that like that's part of it, right? So like, but privilege creates an inherent barrier that keeps you from seeing that. So if you're privileged in any aspect, like if you're intellectually privileged, right? Like say you're just like super smart, that promotes individuality. So any sort of privilege, I feel like promotes individuality in a sense. Promotes it. Not saying that anybody who's privileged will automatically choose the individual route, but because you are, you're way more, what's it called? You're way more liable to seek an individualistic standpoint because you can
for yourself.
You can do it yourself. Whereas other people may not actually be able to, may actually need to rely on people.
Do you think that's a taught thing though? Like in terms of our use of privilege? Because, you know, like there could be somebody who's super smart, super intelligent, who still gives back to their community, who still thinks that's an obligation for them, regardless of the value that they hold on their intelligence. I just think it's like valuing anything over the community, maybe? I don't really know. I feel like this whole conversation is tending toward like how to have a proper society and how to.
Well, yeah. I mean, Well, because I mean, at the beginning of the conversation, we were talking about like kind of like how society impacts identity. So like it does make sense that like we would go back to like how to build a better society in terms of like trying to understand identity because society impacts identity, right? So I don't know. I think yeah, this is some deep stuff, man.
Yeah. I think when I was talking about what was I saying?
This is probably not the direction that you thought the conversation was gonna go in.
I didn't really have a direction.
Yeah, it's fair.
Knowing you.
You can't stop greatness. Can't stop greatness.
Explain that.
If you're truly great, you can't be stopped. There's nothing that'll stop you from doing what you need to do if you're truly great.
If you're truly great.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't think there are great people who weren't able to achieve what they wanted?
I think they gave up too quickly. Or they died. But you can't really stop greatness. Like, you'll be great in some aspect. Or you'll just give up. But if you gave up, then were you really great? No. I feel like if you give up, then you can't be great. You have to... Greatness...
So you have to just die and be great. Otherwise, there's no living in great people, because if you're living in great, you already achieved your greatness. The only reason you didn't achieve it is because you were dead.
No, you can be... No. There are great people who are living. You can be great and be living at the same time.
Yeah, I know.
But the moment that you stop trying to be... The moment that you stop doing that, what you're doing, you know what I'm saying? The moment that you stop being great means you gave up on something. Because, like, say... Okay, so like, look. Listen. Say if I, like... Say I'm profound pondering, right?
Whoa,
and I was great at like making like videos, like talking about stuff, you know, being intellectually, being introspective, right? I was great at that, right?
Okay.
And then I stopped. Would that make me great anymore?
Yeah.
No.
Your value is. I think value is more placed in the individual.
So your values. Well, yeah. I mean, yes. I'm saying like if there was an intrinsic thing that like you felt yourself that was like, hey, like I don't know, like.
So something I think is very great, something in myself that I value a lot.
Yeah. When I say greatness, I mean like internally. Like,
okay.
Like your internal greatness can only be stopped when you stop. If you stop, then that's where your greatness stops. But you could just be great.
Yeah.
Like even if there's different circumstances in your life prevent you from doing a certain thing, you can still be great. Like say I'm the best like engineer ever, and then I get fired, and then I can't work for an engineering company ever again. I can still be great. Maybe not great in engineering, but it's the mindset that keeps you from being great at that point because you're like, oh no, engineering did this and did that. I don't know, I can't be great anymore. Or say somebody goes to jail after doing something phenomenal, and then they're just like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I went to jail. I can't do this anymore. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Like,
they allow temporary failure to cloud their future successes, huh?
And that's what I mean, because like someone who's truly great, there is no, temporary failure will never stop you from doing what you're doing.
So basically, what you're saying, basically, being great is a mentality.
It is, and you can't stop it. Claudette T.
Everybody tap that in.
Claudette T. Claudette. Can I get a like it? Subscribe.
You can.
Like for Clock That T. You feel me?
Shout out your brand, bro.
Oh yeah. At the Kumba Creative on Instagram. That's my brand. I make custom clothing. So whatever you want.
So tap in with him.
Let me know.
He ready for 1,000 orders.
I'm ready for 1,000 orders. I got 100. I gotta make by Tuesday. You feel me? It's good. I make it all myself.
Can you make mine like special?
Mini business.
You can make mine special?
Yeah, bro.
But we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. My next question. We'll go back to identity. Is identity who you are or what you express? Or are you only what you express?
I am who they say I am. Yeah. See, young boy, you said it perfectly, right? Okay. He actually has a point though, right? Because you're saying who you are is identity what you express or who you are?
Yeah. I
feel like what you express and who you are intertwined.
Okay.
So I don't think that's an or.
I don't know.
It's not always an or, is what I'm saying.
If someone expressed who they are and they were the same thing, I think they would always be being authentic to themselves. But I think when people don't express themselves for who they actually are, then they're not. Like, I can reference myself freshman year. I don't think I was expressing myself how I actually was. Mm-hmm. I think I was being performative in some of the things that I was doing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like nowadays I'm more attuned with like who I guess, think myself to be or what I want from myself enough to sort of let go of my need to perform in a certain way and act out of accordance to what I naturally do. I am.
You say I am. Yeah. Yeah, but so okay, I guess the reason why where I was coming from was like who you are being like how you express yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So like, let's just say you don't express yourself.
Okay.
That'll make you a different person.
You said that doesn't?
That will make you a different person. I feel like the mediums of expression that you have for yourself and the level in which you express yourself determines the person that you are. Okay. If people don't express themselves at all, you're going to be way more stressed. You're not going to be able to, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's say just the minimum, the minimum is you don't express yourself at all. I feel like you're a completely different person than if you express yourself all the time.
Yeah, because you're not giving yourself a chance to be seen for real.
Yes, I feel like that's true. But that inherently means that like who you are and how you express yourself
is intertwined,
right? Okay,
I can get down with that. I think there definitely needs to be expression for change to actually happen. Mm-hmm. Like if you have some feeling about yourself, or even I don't know, just expressing yourself enough to see the parts of yourself that are like wanting to change or at conflict with whatever you're dealing with at a certain time, I think is important. Like giving yourself audience so you can stop like being super performative, I think is a very big thing for me. So yeah, it's definitely just like it's always just like you versus you, bruh. But it's really you. It's really you and you. Yeah, it's just like your relationship to yourself that determines pretty much everything we do.
Oh, 100%. And it's like I think the people who are like the most successful are the people who, because the way actually I feel like myself like I've been is that like who I express myself as is more so who I want to be.
Okay.
So like I may not even be to the point. I may not even be the person that I express myself as. And sometimes I'm better than what I express myself as. You feel me? But I feel like majority of the time, like if I'm in a professional setting or if I'm in like a
you acting it up. Yeah.
Like it's like I want to be this type of person, so I'm gonna act accordingly. So I'm gonna express myself as if I am this type of person. Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of people do that because like you want to be, if you want to be better, if you want to be great, you know what I'm saying? Like
embody greatness.
You have to embody greatness. Like fake it till you make it. You know what I'm saying? Type situation.
Okay. What's the difference between like faking it and actually having it?
There is none.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get
because it's all relative to like I feel like
there's a truth to it, but how you feel about yourself, I feel like.
Well, okay. Yeah. Well, actually, this is the same question.
Okay. What as to what?
As to who you are versus how you express yourself. It's the same question,
it's
right?
Still going off. Yeah.
There's no such thing as faking it because, like, at the end of the day, how you express yourself is, in a sense, like, even if it's not who you are, it's who you want to be, and your aspirations for yourself. That's deep in your mind. Yeah, and who you see yourself as. I feel like you express yourself as who you see yourself as.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You express what you are for real. But I don't always think that's
but that's not necessarily who you are.
It doesn't always line up. What you think, I would say, is more so key to your expression. Like, I don't know. Because what we think in a certain situation could be out of line with what we regularly feel. Like, you could be a very secure person, but I think you could have, like, an insecure thought that changes the way you act. But you're still like a secure person. But I don't necessarily know when the divide and switch over between our characteristics really happen. And that's why I think we need to stop putting identity in such a box. But also be somewhat consistent with the identity we prescribe ourselves so we can actually like...
You can't go forward if you don't have
we can actually keep moving forward.
And you can't express yourself if you don't have an identity for yourself either. I think, But I do think that like when you express yourself, you do develop that identity, right? So it's like... I feel like expression is a method to understanding who you are, because and that's the whole reason why I created Kuma Creative creative or creativity creative really. Type. But the whole reason why I ended up creating creative is because I felt like I was in a period of time in which I didn't necessarily know who I was, and I was struggling with my own identity. And kind of like to figure that out, like it was kind of like I had to wrestle with some things that were in my mind that I couldn't necessarily speak about because I didn't know how to articulate them. And I think that that's what different methods of different mediums of expression allow you to do is allow you to discover the parts inside yourself that you don't necessarily know how to articulate yet and you don't necessarily know how to bring to life. And so I will say actually who you are is probably who you are and how you express yourself are intertwined in that matter because, right, like this is who I am. I just don't know how to bring it forth, you know?
So it may express itself in different ways, even if it's not the way that it actually is inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So who you are is kind of like the hint. How you express yourself is like
a choice.
Yeah.
A choice-ish. Sometimes it's a choice. Sometimes it's a choice. Or
Yeah,
maybe
it
it's
is
what
a
you
choice.
think is best. Or maybe it's like without thought because you haven't. I don't even know. I don't know.
I'm trying to like describe it as something. It's like
because it's like a choice.
The
but
thought
it's,
versus action.
It's not. Yeah, it's a thought versus action.
Well, yeah, literally, it is literally a thought versus action. But I don't.
But it's difficult because you sometimes act without thought. It seems. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, I feel like that's always thought. It's just the repeated thought that happens so much that it's automatic.
Subconscious
right?
thought.
It's subconscious thought, yeah. And I think that's what subconscious thought is. It's like you just repeat something to yourself over and over again to the point where it becomes automatic for you, so that way you just act in that accordingly. And that's why manifestation exists, right? Because you can be like, I'm this.
You start acting like this,
Start
like
acting
this.
and
You start seeing stuff that'll lead you to this, to this, to this, to this.
and then you just become that.
Yeah. It's
You
always
just become
here.
great.
It's
And
always,
that's why you can't stop greatness.
It's
You
always
think
here.
that you're great. You know what I'm saying? But it's also why I am who they say I am. Because if somebody else says that you're something and they repeat that to you, and you repeat that to yourself, then you become who they say you are.
Yeah.
So
I definitely, judgment is something we only can give to ourselves, I feel like.
Yeah.
Or, yeah. At least on this, like, yeah. I feel like it's something you have to accept and internalize. And that's why I think it's important to affirm yourself with certain qualities. So when other people tell you something, like you can have that discernment. You can have that, oh, I'm not letting that in. You can have that, I'm listening, but I'm not going to internalize it. Otherwise, other people just have too much access to her. And then you're not actually allowed to be vulnerable with anything.
Yeah. So there's some level of hard-headedness that I feel like every person needs.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Right?
But you need to have an honesty to it. I don't know. It's hard to describe what is honest.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Just work. I just try not to harm other people. That's really just all it is. Like, I feel like I'm cool as long as I can do me and not harm other people at the same time.
Do no harm is like one of the most interesting things that like there was somebody talking about something, like they're talking about ways to live your life, and like one of them is like do no harm. You know what I'm saying? And like that was like a
I think it's freeing.
yeah. And I thought that was exceptionally interesting because I don't think that a lot of people go through life thinking do no harm as your first thought.
Yeah, they think, let me get up. Let me do what I...
They think, let me do what I need to do so that way I can profit, not do no harm.
Yeah.
And
I think harm is relative, too.
Oh, yeah.
I would say no direct harm. Because, like, of course, like, something I did, like, for example, if I ran for president and someone else ran for president and I won, like, I'm technically doing harm, but it's like, not an intentional thing, I would say... Harm... I don't even know, because then
like butterfly effect.
It really is just harm at the end of the day. But I don't know.
I guess
I would say certain intentional harm, certain or negligent harms. I would say, because I wasn't being negligent in my pursuit of doing that. Like, I would say negligent harms too,
like
things that I could have done otherwise, and it would not have harmed me. I would say, but I don't think we should have too much thought about the past in regards to that. Like, I think whatever happened, whatever, there's no like should or could have, would have. It's only stuff that you do. So like our focus shouldn't be on the past, but more so like being present enough to make the right choices in the next time. I think that helped me a lot with like trying to be more patient and calm with pretty much anything.
Yeah. I do feel like, you know, that reminds me of something. Like, it reminds me of like kind of like mistakes and like the way in which they build up your identity. Like, I feel like I made a lot of mistakes. I still make mistakes to this day.
Oh, bro.
Like, but I feel like every mistake is a learning experience for me. Like, I almost make mistakes and live life kind of like, I don't intentionally make mistakes, but like I'm still kind of exploring, right? Yeah. So remember when I said exploring,
you just keep yourself open to the possibility because you don't know at the end of the day. Like, you gotta find out.
I do not know.
You gotta find out.
And I think,
one way.
Yeah, I think that baseline acceptance of like you don't know is like
it's freeing.
Yeah.
It's freeing. And you don't have to know either most of the time. Like, it's like the first step, I feel like, reveals the second. Sometimes you got to take a step and see where it leads and see if you want to turn around, see if you want to go somewhere else. But you got to take a step. I feel like stagnation is the only way to really fail in doing anything.
Yeah, just don't take like 4 steps. If you know you're in the wrong direction on the first step.
Yeah, don't be too prideful.
You might be able. You could take a second step.
Don't be
but
too.
Like, don't take a third step.
Don't be too prideful to start over.
Yeah,
I think that's another thing.
Yeah.
I think that's what stunts people's like growth sometimes is like failure when they are trying to grow, because then they affirm to themselves that who they are is like who they have to be and who they are going to be for the rest of their lives. And I think that's when like certain depressive attitudes can get in play, because you're actually like able to be labeled since you're not changing. Like, I think that's the only point where you can really like be judged by yourself, and it actually like has a super negative impact. Like, I can recognize that with myself. When I wasn't giving myself any like personal freedom in terms of like thought and thinking that I could change and actually believing that I could change, then it's like any negative characteristic I have is like
stuck.
That's what you are. That's what I am. Like, and your thoughts, I feel like, are gonna mimic that, especially if you feel like that.
So is it beneficial to like the positive parts of yourself, keep those like in an exploitative sense, like use those to your advantage, but the negative parts of yourself continue exploring?
I would say, I wouldn't say exploring the negative part, but exploring yourself to see the negative parts. I feel like you have to acknowledge it in order to change anything. You can't like change it if you're not going to face it. So I think it's just like in expressing yourself to yourself until you can see the negative parts. Like, I see it in my thoughts certain times, just like with my certain attitude, and I'm like, well, that's kind of a limiting attitude. That's not allowing me to enjoy this, to actually be present here, to actually do this, that, and other. And just like being intentional with what I'm thinking next. Like, you can implant thoughts in your head. It may be difficult at first, but I think you could definitely just put something up there. And it's important because I think we don't affirm positive things that we do as much as like we hark on ourselves for negative. Like, we'll get on ourselves for negative thoughts, and we won't celebrate ourselves for positive thoughts. It's just like a certain amount of attention we give to negativity that makes it so you have to hyperfixate on yourself so much to change.
Well, I think that like there's an addiction to the negative.
Yeah.
That I think that is present in every social aspect, introspective aspect. There's an addiction to the negative, and I don't know why it exists, but it's just
a chemical reaction.
Really?
Yeah, it's just like, because I read that in a book somewhere. It's like we genuinely just get addicted to the chemicals because like we're just so used to it being associated with who we are that we don't feel like who we are if we're not experiencing those certain. And that's why we'll have like repetitive thoughts about our traumas and past, because it's like our body reaffirming to itself like what it is, what defines me. And
so your body is a limiting aspect.
The body keeps the score. The body keeps the score for real. I think it's not it can be a limiting aspect. It definitely can. Yeah, I would definitely say it's a possible aspect that stops us from being able to change. Like what we've attached to ourselves, was we allowed to be part of our character and part of who we are. And I think, you know, to a certain extent, like that stuff is a part of who you are. But I think the only way to truly like change that from impacting like how you express yourself and who you become is by actually like looking at it and, I don't know, figuring out what needs to be done. Like, I'm no therapist. I don't presume to be one at all. But I think that's what helped me get over everything that I have gone through in my life, pretty much, and allow myself to sort of enjoy the positivity that's still here in the moment, you know.
So I guess like in that sense, like you would probably believe that you are a culmination of your experiences.
I think everything leads to who you are.
All of your experiences lead to who you are?
Yeah. Positive,
but you're
negative.
not just
Nah, because you're also your reaction to what you are, like what's happening right now. And you also contribute to that. Like, your experience is not solely like what happens to you, but like what you project out. Like, if I am in just a good mood and I'm like affirming myself and getting a good mood from just being myself, if I go outside, I might still call it beautiful, even though it might be like a gloomy-ish day. You know, it's just like what caters your perspective to you, what allows it to be positive in certain ways, and that's what you end of the day experience, like how you feel about certain things.
So kind of like training your mind. So like, and this is one thing that I do like consistently is that like sometimes if I have like a super bad experience happen to me, like at the beginning of the day or at any point in time of the day, I'll just tell myself, I'm not gonna let this affect my day. and I'm gonna have a good day, and I always end up having a good day afterwards, because at the end of the day, like
that was a moment.
Yeah, like it's all about how much you let it affect you, and how much I guess you keep that negative thing coming back in your mind, and like this also helps helps with like, you know, getting over somebody, like even like a breakup in a situation where you have those thoughts, like where you have recurring thoughts you can't like get out of your head. It's kind of like some people tend to go for like distractions, but at the end of the day, like the distractions won't reaffirm your identity, and so your identity will always be like casted in that person. You'll always think about something about that person and yourself, right? So like if you were instead to see yourself as not attached to that person, or like affirm yourself as like
where you are, being
like,
enough for yourself, really.
And I think that's super important. Like there needs to be there needs to be a level of individuality, and I feel like that's one of the things that I struggled with within your identity. Like your identity can't be rooted in other people, and this is like an easy thing to like it's like an obvious thing to like hear,
but it's like, so easy to be attached.
So easy to be attached to somebody, and I feel like a lot of like, because for me, like again, like I said, like I moved around a lot, so like I ended up like latching onto my experiences, latching onto my friends, and being like, okay, like these are the people that I want to stay around. Like these are people kind of where my identity is like intertwined with, in a sense. Like I didn't like spending time by myself because I knew that there was time in which I was gonna leave. So like I liked spending time with my people. I was always like, there was a point in time in high school, like I used to always want to be like in one of my friends' rooms, like just like going there doing homework, you know, whatever. Like I didn't like to be in my room by myself. I only did it if I had to, like really had to get work done, you know. And I think that like I actually didn't have the individuality aspect, even though I feel like I've always had like a strong outward sense of self. Like a strong inward sense of self is something that I kind of like developed like more so recently. Because you can project that. You can people who sometimes project strongly don't have the most internal understanding of themselves, internal depth. And I think that that's like kind of it's so interesting. It puts you in like a limbo state, because everyone who sees you is like, oh, that person, they know themselves, they're secure in themselves, they're this, they're that, right? But the whole time you're not even thinking, like
they just trolling.
You're not even thinking, like, you know.
Yeah, that's what I think the performative aspect of what I was talking about was. Like, I would just do stuff for like attention, and it definitely was rooted in my childhood. But like, I can't say I dislike being alone. Like, being alone was like somewhat of a comfort. Like, I liked the introspection, I liked doing that, but like there was always something in me that told me to go find people to connect with. And like even now, I'm finding that that's sort of like the beauty of life, is being able to see like other people's magic, their own perspective, what they can bring to a situation. Because like, I don't know, just like with everybody you meet, there's a certain amount of beauty that I think I am able to find, as long as you know you actually can establish some type of connection or relationship there. Like, I don't know, that's kind of a tangent, but that's just what I like appreciate nowadays, just from coming from that super individual standpoint, because I think we came from opposite ends of the game, low key.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy, because we kind of act similar.
We do.
We kind of act similar,
which is interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, because
you feel like you found like a middle point for you.
More so. But I have to keep myself in check. That's where I'm at right now. I feel like I found a place where I want to be at, but I have to keep myself in check. Like one of the things that I do is like, that's why I go to Cracker Barrel so often. Like, people don't understand. Like, I go to Cracker Barrel twice a week. Like, it's mandatory. Because when I go to Cracker Barrel, what I do is it's an intentional time that I have to myself.
Okay, yeah.
On the way to Cracker Barrel, every single time, I take out my phone, record a voice memo, and just talk about how I experienced my life, right? And then, like, what I've done, right? And that allows me to, like, kind of be like, oh, like how am I doing? Like, who am I? Who am I right now? Like, you know, it's like a check-in for myself. When I get to Cracker Barrel, I sit there, I open up my show, I eat, and I just chill there for an hour. It's just time with me alone. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I got my TV and stuff
that's
like
so
that.
necessary
just
too.
Like, yeah, just me.
And it needs to be intentional too. Intentional time with yourself.
Even if you want to have fun, even if you want to go out, like, you will be drained by that stuff eventually. Like, because at the end of the day, and if you're not drained by it, you just don't know it yet, and you'll just end up crashing out in like too much. Because like what happened to me is like I used to have like periods of time which I was just like really, really stressed, like at the end of the semester. Like I was just really stressed at the end of like every semester, and it was just like weird. Like there's a point in time in which I like dissociated from reality because I was just so stressed because I had so much stuff going on, and I always spent time with other people. Mode. I didn't spend time with myself, and so when you don't spend time with yourself, you're not gonna know who you are, and so like your conscious is kind of gonna take a back seat
Yeah, and then you're gonna wake up one day.
Yeah, so your conscience is gonna take a backseat to what you're portraying yourself as. Like that's what dissociation is, because you're not feeding yourself. You know what I'm saying? You're not giving yourself enough time to rest. You're only using the external part of yourself. You're not feeding the internal part of yourself. And when you stop using the internal part of yourself, and external part of yourself starts to show, that's when you've seen that image of like the guy sitting watching himself.
On some get out stuff.
That's when that separation happens, and that happened to me. And so, I mean, dissociation, like, we can talk about that later. I think that it can be a superpower in some sense.
Yeah, I use it to my advantage.
Yeah, but when you take that back seat, I feel like a way to kind of like keep yourself from doing that, and a way to like match your internal, external self, is by giving time, adequate time to each. And some people need less time than others to achieve that balance.
There, yeah. And it's different stuff too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I talk about that pretty frequently, how everyone needs something to do that makes them feel like themselves, or like a way to express yourself to yourself. Like if you're never going to be seen, then you can never put your own connotations on yourself. Like you can never live by how you feel about yourself if you don't address that. Like looking yourself in the mirror and like saying I love you, or validating your own like look, I feel like it's very important too, because I used to, young black man, we used to get cooked.
Bro, dark skins, bro.
Used to be cooked.
Bro, used to be cooked. Lights go off.
So you would never like think to affirm yourself or tell yourself you actually look good in like a serious way. I think it's also about how you feel about what you say to yourself, because like I think we can tell when we're lying. I think our mind can somewhat tell when we're being deceitful to a certain extent. And it's important to like try to believe what you're saying about yourself, like in effort. It's not always easy at first. Like when I first started telling myself I love myself, it wasn't easy. It was like, why the fuck am I saying that to
weird,
myself?
Bro.
Yeah, it was weird. But now it's just like,
yourself, bro.
Now it's like, yeah, you're supposed to sort of validate yourself for who you are, regardless of how it's expressed sometimes.
That's actually super interesting. Like, because I don't do that to this day.
But you don't tell yourself you love yourself?
Mm-mm. But I think that I can see the way in which it affected my life for sure.
You definitely love yourself, though, right?
Oh yeah, I would say that I love myself. I know I love myself, but like,
just
I think that there's a difference between like expressing that, because like, if you don't express that and you know that that's something that you want to hear, or you know that that's something that you kind of want to like experience, then like, where are you getting that from?
Yeah, you're gonna seek it in the
where are you seeking that from?
You're gonna seek it in wherever give it to you, and that's why I kind of just try to give myself like a certain amount of validation, just in like virtue of me being alive. I think it helps me a lot, because then it's like not so much about like what I'm doing and what that impacts in the future and blah blah blah. Even though like what I want to do is going to impact the future, but I think the certain like negative feeling of like, oh, I have to do this, is a weight that doesn't have to be there. Like especially like studying for classes, or even stuff like that. Like being so preoccupied with like the end goal, like it stops us from actually being able to learn. Like I feel like I learn best when I'm not concerning myself too much with like how it's gonna do, but more so like focusing on the learning aspect of what I'm doing.
Yeah, one of my goals is to be an educator, and so I've been thinking about that. Well, I am an educator right now, but like, I want to impact educational systems, and I've been thinking about that for a very long time. Like, chasing a letter grade and chasing a number grade, like obviously, don't take this and be like, oh yeah, but like that, the whole system of chasing a letter grade is inherently to disqualify people. Because I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm one of the best GPAs that I know, and I'm not the best mechanical. But at the end of the day, I'm one of the best at pattern recognition. So when it comes to tests, I'm like, oh, this pattern, I've seen it before in this, so I'm just gonna go and replicate the pattern. But I'm not actually learning the topic. I'm just replicating patterns because I know what I'm good at, right? And like, so tests and tests, and that's why tests are not necessarily like a good representation of knowledge. They're more so like
memorization.
Yeah, memorization. They're more so like, can you memorize this? Yeah, can you memorize this pattern? Can you apply this pattern that you've learned before? At least in my regard, that's what I've seen tests as always. But like, if you actually turn educational systems into this is a complete tangent. But if you actually turned educational systems into projects and being project oriented, and then like developing certifications based off of your projects, then that would develop a way more of understanding in everybody.
Like seeing what you can do.
Yeah.
Seeing what you sort of tend to.
There might be a way to tie that back to identity.
giving kids a chance to see themselves so they know what they want from life genuinely and authentically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would say. Because I feel like we definitely don't get the opportunity. Like, part of the reason I chose marketing is because I looked it up and was like, oh, this is low-key a high-paying business job that is sort of tangible. I can do, like, multiple things. I can go into digital marketing and just continue to do something that I want to do in the business area. And that's all it was. That looking at the label, I don't know how good I was at marketing, or if I had an affinity for that, or if it was even something I genuinely, like, wanted to do. It's just, like, certain labels we have that we can like valuable, and then we just chase it. But also I don't want to change. Like that's why I did philosophy. That's why I did both. So just God needed both.
Yeah. No. I mean, yeah. Going back to like kind of identity, like I don't know. Identity is in major for a certain extent. Like I chose mechanical engineering, which is the least identifying major I feel like you could ever choose. Like engineering is not really like an identity. Well, at least for me. So that's why I have a design thinking minor. Because I felt like when I was doing engineering, I was funneling everything that I like. And like, this is where it relates back to identity. I feel like I was funneling all of my brain into like this engineering aspect, and I wasn't using any creative aspect of my mind in order, like, except in problem solving. And I feel like when you said something about like, what'd you say the beauty of life was again?
Seeing like other people's magic, their own perspective, like their own viewpoint.
Yeah, and I think that like for me, like the meaning of life, not necessarily the beauty, but the meaning of life is in creation, I think. And like if you don't create, you won't live. Regardless of what that is, like you can create experiences, you can create like mentalities. But creating is leaving something. You know what I'm saying? I feel like there's no purpose without creation, I guess, is the way in which I mean that creation is the meaning of life. Because if you don't make anything, if you don't, that can be a mental something. That can be something that's mental. That can be something that's like a relationship. Like if you're not creating something, if you're not growing something, if you're not doing anything, then what is your purpose? You know? I don't know. And I think that like, within everybody's identity, I think that they should instill being creative. Even if you're not like the most artistically creative person, or even if you're not like, you know, because I'm not artistically creative, but I make shirts. And part of the reason why I was able to do that was because I knew I had ideas in my head, but I couldn't put them on paper. Like it was like there was a difference between what I was, you know what I'm saying, in my head, and kind of what I could put out, which is like who you are, and like, you know. But yeah, and so like that's why I started doing digital graphics, because like it allowed me to be able to like draw things I couldn't draw. You know,
that's real. Yeah, I get that completely.
But yeah, like I think everyone should think about themselves as a little bit of a creator, because it allows you to see yourself as more than what you are, and you see yourself as like somebody whose ability to make things that will outlast themselves, or somebody whose ability to be able to produce something that's
put
beneficial.
Themselves out there in a way.
Put yourself out there.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think I recommend creativity to pretty much anyone. Drawing something just for the sake of doing it, though, not necessarily for the sake of some type of gain. I think just like doing it to do it, because I think it's in our nature to create something, to do something. Like you can see it in pretty much everything that humans have done. It's just like a subtle note of creativity, and I think society rewards creativity to a good extent. Like even if you go into like a certain field that's like basic, like if you're a creative business person, like you still do very well. You know, I think it's definitely just a benefit to overall life, even if you don't necessarily like just want to tap into yourself. Just if you want to do good, like I think creativity is important.
Ways to train your creativity. That'd be interesting.
Ways to train your creativity. Exploring creativity.
That'd be interesting. You know what I'm saying? Profound pondering.
You got it, bro. You want to come here and record it for me?
Yeah.
Which I'll be able to. Never mind. Never mind.
You about to say what? Yeah, I knew what that was good. I knew it was coming. But yeah, man.
Oh, bro. Well, I don't have any more questions.
I don't have any more answers, but.
All right. Well, thank you very much, y'all. The Caleb Washington. I'll put his links in the bio so y'all can check out his shirts and order a bunch. But you're tight. Just send that in. Profound Pondering X. Kuma Creative collab coming soon. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fire.
You got any last words?